Welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. Your host is the founder of the UK Travel Planning website, Tracy Collins. In this podcast, Tracy shares destination guides, travel tips, and itinerary ideas, as well as interviews with a variety of guests who share their knowledge and experience of UK travel to help you plan your perfect UK vacation. Join us as we explore the UK from cosmopolitan cities to quaint villages, from historic castles to beautiful islands, and from the picturesque countryside to seaside towns.
Welcome to episode 98 of the UK Travel Planning Podcast. So this week we have a lovely trip report from Vernetta and Therron. It was based around, as Therron's going to explain, his lifelong passion for Liverpool football team. The first thing I did ask, though, was for them to introduce themselves and tell us whereabouts in the states they're from.
We are from Bloomington, Indiana, which is in the middle of the Midwest.
So my name is Therron Thomas. I spent 30 years in the U.S. Army, grew up here in Bloomington, Indiana, retired. I went to work for the Navy full-time. I work now as a recruiter for the federal government. 58 years old. Like I said, grew up in the local area. Actually dated her 40 years ago and tried to get her to marry me back then, and she wouldn't. Got divorced several years ago. Ran back into her. You know, we connected and finally got my dream. So,
yeah, that is so lovely.
That's pretty much me.
That was meant to be, Vernetta.
Yeah, and I got her blushing.
I was going to say, if you listen to the podcast, you won't tell, but actually Vernetta's she's blushing, which is really lovely. So Vernetta, you're from the same area then? So you were born and brought up in the same area of the state?
Yes, I was. Like he said, we met when I was in high school. I was in my last year of high school. Things didn't work out. I went into the military, and after I got out, I married someone else, also got divorced. And when we reconnected, you know, we talked about things we would like to do, and going to the UK was one of them. So we didn't expect a pandemic and other things to happen along the way.
Yeah, right. You know, that impacted so many people's travel plans. So when did you make it over to the UK, and how long were you there for?
We went in early November. We were there for 2 weeks, or 2 weeks and a couple days.
Mm-hmm. Our travel plans really revolved around Liverpool soccer, honestly. That was,
Absolutely.
I've been a Liverpool fan since I was like 6 years old. And when we talked about going, I said, well, the Tower of London's not going to move. These other things aren't going to move, but there is a soccer schedule. And I wanted to get a game in Anfield. So we kept making our plans, and they really didn't solidify until about June when I was able to purchase our tickets. And then we had a date, and that's when we really kind of set everything in stone and decided to make the trip.
So that's fantastic. I have to say, I don't know if you're aware, but Doug's a massive Liverpool fan since he was a child as well. So that will make his heart sing. Yeah, he absolutely adores Liverpool. Actually, if I could swing the camera around, we've got some Liverpool memorabilia in the room, and he's a big cricket fan as well. So we've got cricket stuff.
We'll send you some pictures. We have your email address. I'll send you a picture. I have an entire Liverpool bar just on the other side of this wall.
Oh, so. Yes. You send that. Doug would love it. Absolutely love it. Absolutely. So that was fantastic. So you kind of had something to go on. You had your date. You had, you could look at the Liverpool fixtures. So give us a brief overview of what your itinerary worked out to be.
Well, I think I would say first that when we made our itinerary, unlike a lot of people, we didn't use a travel agency or anything, because we're both disabled. We have a lot of mobility issues and things, and what we had planned is that we wanted to do something every other day and set that in stone. So we started planning like that. It was like, well, let's, and we can fill in, we can do all kinds of things in between if we were able, but we thought every other day is not bad. Right. And we could set that in stone. If we get feeling bad, then we're not going to miss something we really want to see. So we didn't buy any tickets for anything or anything other than our transportation and that game, and everything else was pretty much on the fly, right?
We had the tickets for the game. We had our Liverpool and London hotels reserved. Mm-hmm. We had a London pass, and we had the Britrail pass.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
So we just a quick overview, I guess. We landed in Manchester, and that was really because we flew on points. And when I went to go buy the tickets with my credit card points, there was a little bit of a variation. And actually, a lot of people had told us that flying into Manchester might be a little easier because it's a smaller airport, that type of thing. So we landed in Manchester. We got on the train and we went to Nottingham. And the reason we went there is because my friend, our friend, Andy Henley, and his wife live right outside of Nottingham, and they had invited us to come and kind of start our trip. So we went to Nottingham. They came and met us. We went to York. We got done there for a couple of days. We went to Liverpool.
We went to York on the one day that the Minster was closed.
That was horrible.
The Minster was closed that day. It was terrible.
Yeah, but we got to see the shambles and many other things. It was really, really kind of cool. But it was just bad. We walked up wanting to see the Minster, and it was closed. And then we went to Liverpool, and we spent 4 days.
4 days, 5 days, something like that.
Went from Liverpool down to London. I took a day trip to Leicester because, again, my friend Andy and I play a obscure table soccer game called Subbuteo, and his Subbuteo club was meeting, so I went up and played with them. We spent 6 days in London, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
We went to Westminster Abbey. It was the King's birthday. Yeah. It was not supposed to rain. So we left our rain jackets and umbrellas in the room. So of course it rained. We were about to Scotland Yard when it really poured. So we bought an umbrella and realized we needed to.
Yeah. So then we left from there. We had a couple other places we thought about going, but we ended up going back to Manchester. And then Andy and his wife met us again and drove us to Wales. We went to Conwy Castle and visited there for the day. It was lovely. Mm-hmm. And then went back to Manchester and spent the last day and a half or so there. And it worked out. Honestly, I think our trip worked out perfectly. It was just, there was no rush to anything. We weren't on someone else's schedule. We could take in things as we saw them. And I tell you, if, one piece of advice I would give to anybody who's doing this for the first time is you have two choices. You can either go stare at something for hours and maybe get bored of it, or you can stare at whatever you want to as long as you want to, and you don't, and that's kind of the way we took it. We were, you go to the Tower of London, we'd look at a statue. We'd, I can't tell you how many, probably hours I spent taking pictures of, there's these chains in Liverpool with locks all over them. I just was fascinated by them, and I probably never saw those things other than just walking by them, So yeah, it was kind of a just do whatever we want to do trip with things like we're going to go to Westminster, we're going to go to the Tower of London. We're going to go see whatever.
We were going to go to Hampton Court Palace and also to Windsor. And I looked at him when he got back from Leicester. I didn't go with him to Leicester. I needed to rest. It was just too much. I was done.
Yeah.
And I told him, if we do that, I'm good. I want to go and see those, but I won't be able to do anything else the rest of this trip. So, and also I think while we were in the middle of our time in Liverpool, I had figured out ways we could do this trip again and see more and do more. So, we made the decision that to save with the health, that not to go to places. And I think that's a piece of advice that I picked up from someone in the Facebook group. And I thought, oh, it can't be that bad. Yeah. Oh, it was. Yeah. So, also people need to be prepared to maybe not do it all.
Yeah. And your group was just phenomenal. I mean, like that train pass is the best thing ever. I'm just telling you right now, anybody who's planning on going, we got a first class pass. We could hop on that train anytime we wanted to, go anywhere we wanted to. It was fantastic. And also, I've told this story. I said, if you're a single person and you want food, get a first class train ticket, hop on, because 9 times out of 10, they'll let you take anything you want from the cart. You can get your entire day's meal by running a 15-minute train ride up the road, So, that was phenomenal. The train pass was fantastic.
I think you guys did an amazing job of planning your itinerary, bearing in mind your kind of need to rest and take your time to do it. And I think that's really important, Vernetta, as well, is I don't think people sometimes realize just how tiring it is. It can be phenomenally tiring, whatever you do on a trip, because I think sometimes people as well put the pressure on themselves to try and see everything. I've got to see everything. I'm in London. I've got to try and see everything. Yeah. And actually, if you do that and you do get tired, sometimes it does take some of the joy out of it.
It does.
Yeah.
And being on someone else's schedule too, again, I go back to some people are cut out for that. Absolutely. And if that's your bag of chips, that's what you're going to do, but at the end of the day, that wasn't us. We didn't want to be, we've got a half hour to look at this and back on the bus and let's go. We didn't want to do that at all. And it was fantastic.
And I think part of the reason that we started doing what we do with the website and the podcast and all our resources is to enable people to plan it themselves, so that if a tour isn't for you, but you're feeling a bit daunted about, okay, how do I put this together? And I was actually talking to somebody in the Facebook group yesterday, was asking me about a particular tour company, and I was like, yeah, you can use that, but we've got a lot of resources if you actually wanted to put it together. If you've got and we understand some people haven't got the time or inclination, but if you have got the time and inclination, we've got so much out there for you to use to do it. So
we joked when we first started this, being in the military, she said, we need to get a passport. And I was like, oh, that's right. Yeah, we got to get a passport. And I joked. I said, the last time I went on a plane trip like this, I had a rifle and hand grenades going to Iraq. So I didn't need a passport, So,
yeah.
But even that was kind of intimidating, never getting a passport. I was like, oh my God, what's this going to entail, So just take it as it is and take the entire thing as an adventure, honestly. And, money was a big concern. I was freaking out because we tried to buy some things with my credit card and it kept getting rejected. And it was a problem with our bank. It took them 2 months to rectify it. Every time we would try to do something that would reject, they'd fix it, quote unquote, fix it. Next time we would do it again.
Yep.
So I went and got us each like $400, 400 pounds to take with us because I was terrified that we were going to get there and the card would be messed up. We were, 5-6 hours difference from the bank. And in retrospect, none of that was a worry. Honestly, I think everybody was so friendly and things were so available that anything could have been fixed,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think a lot of people probably have those similar worries.
Yeah.
It should remain a concern, but it shouldn't worry you is the way I think I would tell people, just go enjoy,
Absolutely.
And things will work out.
So when you were in the UK, obviously you used the train the majority of the time to get around. And then when you were in London, how did you get around in London?
A combination. We got some cabs. The cabs were pretty expensive, really, and you don't know where you're going. We absolutely, going back to Liverpool, we undoubtedly got took by a cab driver.
Okay.
No doubt. The cab ride that we took over we went to watch the Tranmere Rovers, on the suggestion of a waiter one night, and the trip over took quite a while, and I can't remember what it was. It was like 40 pounds or something for that cab ride, which we paid. On the cab ride back, it was like 14 pounds. Mm-hmm. And we talked to that cabbie, and he said, oh, well, the guy realized you were Americans, right? And he drove you around the block a few times. And
yeah.
Oh, okay, well, it happens, right?
Yeah.
But also back to Liverpool, Google Maps said that the hotel was 0.8 of a mile from the train station. Uh-huh. And by the time we walked this way and walked that way and around this building and that turn, it was 1.5 miles.
Okay.
So from London Euston Station to the hotel was supposed to be 3 miles. And by that time we thought we could do that. And it was getting dark when we arrived in London, so we took a taxi.
And the country's lovely. I mean, the walk, honestly, and just talking from a United States perspective, right?
Yeah.
90% of the United States, that walk would not have been nearly as daunting because our country is so new that it's based on a grid pattern, number one. Number two, we don't have cobblestone sidewalks and things, right? So for people with disabilities, the whole country was developed over such a long period that the streets are not necessarily like they are in the States. If you go 20 feet this way and turn and go, 400 feet down that way and another turn and the cobblestones and things. So it was just daunting. It was different than it was here in the States. So things you don't think about, when you go to another country that you just assume there's going to be smooth sidewalks everywhere and then there's not. And it's beautiful. I mean, the place is beautiful, but it's certainly, for someone with disabilities, dragging some luggage. And, the tube and everything was really easy once we figured it out. We're from Indiana. We don't have subways here. If I was maybe from New York or Washington, maybe I'm used to it. But the first time I went to go get on the underground there, I was just blown away. I was looking at this giant map of 100 different names and all these arrows, and it looked like a bowl of spaghetti with Fruit Loops. You know what I mean? I was like, my goodness, this is terrible.
Yeah.
And finally, someone saw I was in distress and stopped and said, "Can I help you, mate?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, I don't know what I'm looking at." I said, "I'm trying to get here, and I see that." And he was very helpful. This gentleman said, "Well, mate, all you have to do is look at the color." He said, "You find the place you're going to go, and you follow that color all the way to the end, and that's the one you want to get on."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's way simpler." But I hadn't looked at that. I hadn't read anything about it. I didn't know.
Yeah.
So that was way better once I learned that.
It's lovely as well that people, and you'll find that people will stop and help you if you look like you're not sure where you're going or what you're doing. People will help. It's like, okay, do you need a bit of help with this?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I told her I wasn't going to say this, but I'll tell you, and I'll rephrase it the way I normally. But I'll tell you, this was our impression, and she can disagree, but we got there, and our overall impression was that the people of England were, as a whole, much more standoffish than I would have expected as a group, but individually, some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. Absolutely. So it's a very unusual culture where you just feel almost like an imposter almost all the time. And, people will bump into you and they just don't pay any attention. And then you'll stop and say, "Hey, can you help me find a sandwich shop?" And they'll go buy you a sandwich, and it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, it's such an odd contrast, where you just kind of feel like, my God, like these people aren't friendly at all, but individually fantastic.
I think perhaps you've kind of just described or encapsulated there in a few sentences the kind of impression of English people has been a bit standoffish. And I think if you're in a big city, you're going to find that. For example, in London, you might sit on the tube and nobody will make eye contact, that sort of thing. But honestly, if you stop and ask anybody for help, which obviously you've experienced, they will help you. And they will, doesn't matter if it's in London or in Liverpool or, in any of the big cities, people will help you out. But as a collective, people do kind of like the personal space and keep to themselves. And I just think maybe that's a kind of cultural thing that we just are maybe a little bit more reserved. Perhaps. Let's change the subject slightly and we'll talk about accommodation. So you stayed with friends for part of the time, which is really lovely because that's a fantastic way to experience the culture. But what sort of accommodation choices did you make?
We stayed at the Staybridge Suites in Liverpool at the Albert Docks, which, interestingly enough, was half a block from an area where my late grandmother had a picture taken in 2007. So we were able to recreate that picture. Yeah. We stayed at Tower Hotel in London.
That was fantastic.
This was our honeymoon, 3-4 years delayed because, thanks to the plague. And that was amazing and fascinating. We stayed in London an extra day because we found out they only did the bridge lift on Saturday and Sunday. So we stayed an extra day so we could see the bridge lift. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that you had the flexibility to do that. That's amazing. And did you enjoy that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was. I'll tell you, there were a few highlights about accommodations that one of them was, and we'll go back to the interesting interactions. The very first day we got there, she was not feeling well at all, and we went into the Staybridge in Nottingham.
No,
Premier Inn in Nottingham, and I went up to the clerk and I said, "Hey, is there any way we can get an early check-in? My wife's not feeling well." And he goes, "Absolutely not. No, we don't do early check-ins." I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks. Don't want to." So we sat in the lobby for about 4.5 hours. Went and got her a sandwich, which she couldn't really eat. She was sick, wasn't really good. So I look over and there's another guy working, and I thought, you know what? I just can't believe they don't allow early check-ins. So I went over to that gentleman and I said, is it like a Premier Inn wide policy that you don't allow early check-ins? He goes, "I don't know what you're talking about, mate." He goes, "I can get you an early check-in." And he click, and he's like, "Here's your card." It's like, go. Like, are you kidding me? So anyway, again, it's just personal, right? Yeah. Anytime you add people into something, it's going to be different.
That was the only issue we had at any hotel the entire time. was just that one rude gentleman.
Yeah. Otherwise, everybody bent over backwards to help us. It was incredible. The place we stayed in Liverpool was fantastic, and just by the second hour we were there, half the staff seemed like they knew who we were. And it was just lovely.
The lady who added our additional day at Tower Hotel, we told her, she's like, "Are you staying for any reason?" And I said, "I want to see the bridge lift." And she said, "Oh, that's common. Yeah. That's not a problem. That's common. Yeah. We hear that a lot."
Yeah.
Yeah, and the view out of our hotel was spectacular. It was. I honestly, she wanted to see the bridge, so we paid a little extra to get a view of the bridge, right? And I being an American, being the way I was raised, I fully expected to go in and press my face against the glass and sort of see the bridge over there, and let her take a turn pressing her face against the glass. We threw open the blinds, and it was like a painting. It was just absolutely spectacular. The bridge was lit up, and we could see the wheel, and it was just absolutely. We stood there for 45 minutes staring out the window, not moving, like, this is incredible,
Oh,
that's called one of our granddaughters on video chat and said, "Look at this. This is our hotel."
Yeah.
And
it was lovely.
Yeah.
So a quick, sort of side story related to accommodations was one is laundry. Like, the place in Liverpool had laundry, and it was free, except you had to buy, laundry pods if you wanted those. And we had taken some things with us to do that. But then there was no laundry at, the Tower Hotel. So, we kind of got some dirty laundry accumulated. And when we went to Manchester one evening, she was ready to go to bed. I said, "I'm going to go do laundry." So I looked up to see if there was a coin-operated laundry, which are pretty common in the United States. And I found one 3 miles away, got on a bus, went there. And when I got off the bus, the guy's like, "Hey, Bate, this is kind of a dangerous neighborhood. What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm going to go do laundry." And he goes, "Okay, so there's a police station right over here. If you need anything, you just be careful. This is a rough neighborhood." "Okay, no problem. Thank you." So I get out. I follow my GPS walking on my phone. I walk, across the street, and I'm standing in front of a pub. And I was like, "Oh, this says this is a laundry," So I make a lap around the pub, and I go into an alleyway behind the pub, and there are 2 washing machines and a dryer under a little overhang in an alley behind the pub. And I was like, I guess I'm doing laundry in an alley. It was outside, and so I put money in, and we did the laundry. I went inside the pub and had a beer, which was also a strange experience. And it was like Peaky Blinders night at the pub, so everyone was dressed in costume and stuff. It's just almost surreal.
In Manchester, wearing a Liverpool FC hat and shirt.
Your husband would appreciate that. As I was getting ready to walk in the bar, I realized I'm wearing my hat and a shirt, so I zipped it up to my neck, took my hat and shoved it under my arm under the jacket, and walked in and pretended I was, no, don't like Liverpool here, and had a couple of beers, did my laundry. It was a whole experience, but yeah, so laundry is a thing, if when we were in London, we actually found a cleaners that was right back behind the Tower Hotel, but they wanted $7 or £7 for underwear.
Yes.
So it was crazy.
£7
like the amounts.
One pair of underwear.
It was insanely.
I told him I could wash underwear in the sink.
So I guess my point in saying all of this is if you're going to go over there and you pack light like we did, which we can talk about a little bit more in a moment, laundry is certainly different than it is in the United States. It is to us, it was very difficult to find, and when we found it was overly expensive. So just planning point. So
I think that does come up quite a lot. Actually, people asking about trying to find a laundromat in the UK, and I think they still exist and they are still there, but they're less common than they were in the past, I think. So, and I know obviously sometimes if you stay in a hotel and the amount that they want to charge for doing any laundry can be exorbitant. So that's definitely something if you're packing lightly that you're going to have to consider. I mean, I do try to, like you, Vernetta, I try to wash certain items in the sink and hang them up. We've got a portable washing line, which we take with us, which is brilliant, which sticks on either side, and we can fit that in. So we can do the kind of smalls that way. But yes, it can be an issue finding laundromats. Yeah. And I think I'll have a look and see if there's actually an app, because I'm sure there's going to be an app about where you find them. I'll have a look, because that might be something useful.
Right. Maybe there is. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, there may very well be.
Because that does come up quite often. I mean, we've stayed in quite a lot of B&Bs and they're quite often will let you do, or they'll say, yes, give us us a laundry and we'll do it and help out. And I know Doug stayed in a hotel in Wales last year, and he was down there on his own doing some work in Wales. And again, it was lovely at the hotel. They went, "Oh, just give us a laundry. We'll sort it for you." So sometimes it's worth asking as well. If I guess a bit of a posher hotel, probably not as easy to get it done that way. But if a B&B or kind of guest house, you can do it, potentially get it done that way. So tell us what your I'm sure the Liverpool match is going to come into this, but what were some of your favorite experiences and places that you visited?
Liverpool Cathedral was gorgeous. They were setting up for an event inside, so we couldn't really see a lot. Westminster Abbey, wet feet and all. Yeah. We were not the only people who had soaking wet feet that day at Westminster Abbey.
Yeah, that was fascinating. You go in, and she's way more well versed on all of the history of England and those things, and. When I walk into a place and I see Rudyard Kipling's grave, right, I'm like, I'm already fascinated. So I could have spent 3 days in that place walking around looking and finding all the famous people and things, that was really neat.
We were there. We got to London. Well, the Liverpool game was Remembrance Sunday. Yeah. So all the poppies and everything were still out. Right. He was able to get across with a poppy on it. There was a section right outside of Westminster Abbey that was for American service members who were lost in Iraq and Afghanistan. So he was able to place a cross with the name of his soldier he lost in Iraq outside of Westminster Abbey. And,
that was wonderful.
Yeah.
The Tower of London was fascinating. Yeah. We sponsored a block in the tower in memory of our daughter that we lost in early 2020. So, we could stand and look, there's her stone, which obviously we couldn't see, but we know what side of the tower, we know where it's at.
Yeah.
So,
there was a lot of little things that happened. I mean, as you said, I cried like a baby when I went into Anfield. I'm not ashamed to admit it at all. The first time I walked in and saw that field after, 57 years on the planet and wanting to see it, it was emotional. Being able to touch the sign, as you walk out, those things were all memorable. But honestly, the things that really more memorable to me was just our chance meetings. And I'll give you a few examples. One of them was our cab driver when we went to go take a tour of Anfield, ended up being a player from the 1984 Tier 2 Liverpool team. And we talked for 30 minutes. He got out of the cab and we talked, took pictures and stuff. It was fantastic, When we left the game, we were walking in the rain because you're not going to get a taxi. We didn't realize, you're not going to get a taxi anywhere near Anfield, after the game.
No. So
we started walking. I thought, well, we'll walk a mile or whatever, right? We got a cab and there were two ladies that were like, hey, can we share the cab with you? And I said, absolutely, jump in, One of the ladies' husbands was the founder of the radio station that tower in Liverpool is from.
Wow.
And it was just another chance meeting to meet somebody, and just hear her talk for 15 or 20 minutes as we rode. And there were several things like that happened while we were there. They were just absolutely just fascinating. And I got to tell you, I have an artistic side, right? So, what she didn't know was I was taking pictures like crazy. Like every time we come across a sign, I love signs, and I take pictures in alleyways and graffiti and, portions of sidewalks and stuff. And she kept, I know in her mind, she was like, what in the world is this person doing? Why is my husband taking pictures of stuff? And, but when I got back, I had a website and I was able to take a map of England and it took the 745 photographs that I had taken and made a collage that is shaped like the UK, and gave it to her as a present.
As a birthday present. Yeah. I figured out he had been, some of those pictures he had taken of me. We were in Westminster Abbey, and I was standing fascinated looking at the tomb of Mary, Queen of Scots. We have a Stuart relation and part of my family. So I'm just fascinated and amazed that I'm seeing this in person, and he's standing behind me taking pictures of me standing there, fascinated to see all of it. There's
you can make whatever you want to make out of the trip. It depends. You know what I mean? There are some people who are cut out that are only going to be fascinated if they see Big Ben. There's people like me, and I think her also, that we went. We were coming back from York, and what's the name of the place where they filmed the
Chatsworth?
Chatsworth.
We stopped at Chatsworth.
Let's stop at Chatsworth, and it just it was just fascinating. There was a statue of a horse. Just so many little things. Little street corners and phone booths and things that just absolutely.
We have the Life 360 app on our phones. It's a safety tracking app.
We have that.
My sister sends me a picture. When we were at Chatsworth, she had taken a screenshot that showed where we were at and asked if Mr. Darcy was home. So
it's lovely. Chatsworth is, because I lived probably about 25 minutes drive from there for 20 odd years. That's where Doug's not too far from there. Yeah. So when we were back in December, January, we like to go. Chatsworth is lovely at Christmas. They do a themed Christmas trees throughout. I don't know, was that
they had just opened the what do they call it,
the holiday Christmas mart, and they were one of the guides, I guess, said they were still getting the house decorated. We were there like 2 days after they had opened the Christmas mart. That was fascinating. Here in the States, Christmas starts the day after Thanksgiving, and there we were in November, and all the Christmas markets were open.
They start.
So that was really fascinating.
Beginning of November in London, you get the lights on, and the Christmas markets start. So you get all over, and like Bath will have one, and York will have one. We actually went to the York one last year, just before Christmas. So they kind of start different times, but really sort of from mid-November onwards to just before Christmas, you'll get all of the Christmas markets. Did you enjoy having a wander around there, Vernetta?
Yeah, they were closing, so we weren't there very long, but it was. We
hit a couple of. We hit the one in Manchester.
We went to one in London. We met a friend of mine, a Facebook friend of mine that I finally got to meet in person. She's in London, so we met her, and she had us, get on a bus, and we're gonna take a tour of town on a regular bus, not on a hop off bus. And we got off at Trafalgar Square, and then walked back part way and walked through one of the markets there, and walked through the markets in Manchester, and it was just it was really fascinating.
So I know you went to places like Westminster Abbey, and I don't know if you did any other tours. Did you do a tour of Westminster Abbey, or did you just like Tower of London, Westminster Abbey? Was that just a ticket and go in and look around yourself, or did you do any tours when you were there?
We didn't do any tours. We took the tube into London one day and went to Regent Street because I wanted to go to Liberty of London and get fabric. And we found an Asian fusion restaurant there, and we walked back to the hotel and
discovered all kinds of things.
Discovered everything, walked past St. Paul's completely and totally by accident.
The only tour we took the entire time was at Anfield. That was the only,
we took a stadium tour at Anfield.
Stadium tour at Anfield. That was the only thing that was like arranged like that we did.
That's really popular to do that. I think that's something. I don't know if Doug's done that yet. I know that would be on his wish list. He usually tries to get to a match because one of his best mates in the UK is also a massive Liverpool fan. So the two of them try to get up to see a match when they're back. Did they win? I have to ask you, did Liverpool win?
They did.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, they won, and the Tranmere Rovers both won 3-0. So
brilliant.
Great games.
Brilliant. So just talking about, you mentioned a bit about food there, finding that Asian fusion restaurant. Did you try any British foods? Did you have any kind of favourites? Any favourite places that you ate?
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you what I didn't like was the brown sauce. I wanted to try it so bad, and the very first day I tried it, and I was like, okay, well, I'm over that.
It was horrible. Just the smell.
I became quite the fan of eating beans for breakfast. That was something I was like, I've got to try this. I tell you, honestly, I was a big fan. It was very, very good. We were told by so many people, it's like, oh, the foods there are gross. It's bland. It's this or that or the other. I'll tell you, honestly, there wasn't a bad thing we ate other than the brown sauce the entire time we were there.
We found a chip shop in Liverpool that was really good.
Had a piece of fish the size of a Volkswagen. It was gigantic, and we stopped
mushy peas.
Our friend
Andy was telling us about mushy peas. Yeah, those were not bad.
We stopped at a place. We had some mushy peas. And they warned us. Andy and Julia had warned us. They're like, the prawns and cocktail sauce. They said cocktail sauce over here is like ketchup. Like just they told us about a few things. I discovered Coronation chicken. And I tell you, if I could eat that like 3 times a week, I would. It was fantastic. The sauce that I ended up buying,
the pickle stuff.
Yeah, pickle. I'd never had it before. Huge fan. Love it.
Was that like Piccalilli or
there was a lot of
pickle? Which one was it?
Branston
pickle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. A slice of cheese and some lettuce and tomato and some pickle. A great sandwich.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a guy. I love it. But yeah, that was wonderful.
Andy introduced him to Iron Brew.
Iron Brew. And I still have my friends. I found Iron Brew at a market. Here in the States, we have a place called Jungle Gyms. And we went over there, and it's like a big international market. And I found some. So this past weekend, I had my friends trying it because I was like, listen, you need to tell me what it tastes like, because I'm telling you, there are huge arguments on Reddit and everything else, people going back and forth about what this tastes like.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan. I really like Iron Brew.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's very popular Scottish drink. So it originates from Scotland. So very.
We became a fan of instant coffee as well.
Oh, my grandmother last early spring, early summer, when we finally got our passports, I drove to where my grandmother was in a nursing home, and I was like, Grandma, I finally have a passport. Look at this. And she said, Vernetta, you are going to love England, but they drink instant coffee. You won't like that. And I'm thinking to myself, it's been about 20 years since she's been there.
Surely
instant
that's
coffee's
different.
Not a thing anymore. I learned Grandma was correct, and we drink instant coffee without a problem, because I'm too cheap to pay £10 for a cup of coffee every time I wanted a cup of coffee.
In fact, we got to the point where when we came back, we bought a boiling pot, electric kettle, and some different teas and things, because we both already like tea. But the instant coffee, it's upstairs right now. We still brew coffee on a daily basis, but we're kind of a fan of the instant coffee.
Okay, that's cool. I don't drink coffee, so it's never. When I go to the UK, I know that a lot of Australians will say, "Oh, the coffee in the UK is awful," because they say they have the best coffee in the world. I can't judge because I don't drink it at all, so I don't know.
We did keep Costa Coffee slightly in business. Tesco and Pret also were right by the London Hotel, so we helped with their business.
And I tell you, that's going back to the way we traveled, right? Enjoying what you can enjoy and finding things and just discovering. It was fascinating to go into a Tesco, and like every day we would buy a new bag of crisps. I keep calling them chips. Of a different flavor, because it's stuff I've never seen ever, and take it back to the hotel room and be like, these are god awful, or wow, I wish I had these in the States, but just simple things, you have to take that opportunity to discover, And
I love the fact that you guys have done that. I mean, it's like it's a great thing to do. We love to go wherever we go in the world. We like to go in the supermarkets because it's just a big window into the culture and what people eat and enjoy. And yes, in the UK, there's like 75 billion different types of crisps. So whenever we go up there, there's always new flavors to try. So it's always amazing. So I know you've already kind of covered this, but I don't know, Vernetta, if you answered this question. So I'm probably going to land this with you. If there was one tip that you would give to anybody planning to travel to the UK for the first time, because obviously for you guys, this was your first trip, what would you say would be your top tip?
I'm back to be prepared to not be able to do everything.
Yeah.
Take lots of pictures and be there in the moment and take your photos, but be prepared that you may not be able to do everything.
I think mine probably would be, I'm trying to think how to word this, is do your preparation in advance, pack light. We took literally a small carry-on and a backpack apiece, and that was plenty. That was plenty.
Yeah.
But what we also had planned on, and we actually ended up doing more than we expected, was we knew we wanted souvenirs. We knew we were going to collect some things while we were there. So we went and bought a suitcase, right? And then we ended up buying a second suitcase, but and we paid for those to come back, right?
Yeah.
But we kind of planned to make sure that we weren't going to drag those all over the country the entire time, right? We knew that if we bought those on the last 4 or 5 days we were there, we'd be able to go hit some souvenir shops, go back to the shops we had seen before, that type of thing. So, it's really easy to overpack. Yeah. And I tell you that, it's amazing how many wares you can get out of. You need, I just tell you, change your underwear every day and your socks, right? But at the end of the day, as long as you're not a complete slob, you can get 3 or 4 days out of a pair of pants, 3 or 4 days out of a shirt, right? So pack light and spend your time enjoying things instead of trying to figure out how you're going to get to your next hotel or whatever. It's just, there is so much to discover there that I think we could go back 10, 15 more times. We'd never see all the things we'd like to see. Yeah. But we liked the things that we're able to see, right? Is the thing. We spent the time that we wanted to spend seeing the things we wanted to see as long as we wanted to. And again, that's probably I think the number one thing we would tell anybody is just go enjoy yourself. Yeah. And don't, try to pack it in. Don't do what everybody else does just because that seems to be the thing to do. Because you can't walk 100 feet in England without finding something fascinating, especially when you're from a country like America, right? We see things that are 175 years old and we think they're old. You go there and there's literally Roman walls crossing the sidewalk in the middle of a park. And it's just fascinating. If you have any appreciation of history at all, it is just simply stunning. And it's amazing.
Oh, I just have to ask you one question, because you mentioned about the souvenirs and what you bought, and you brought suitcases back. So do you have a favorite thing that you bought?
Go ahead, sweetheart.
I collect souvenir spoons. I have collected souvenir spoons since I was 9 or 10 years old. So I came home with 2 dozen, I think. Right. And I wanted a Paddington bear. We got to London and there's Paddingtons everywhere. And I saw the price and I said, absolutely not. And we were in the airport in Manchester, ready to come home. And we still had British pounds. So I have a Paddington. So there's my story behind how I came home with the Paddington.
So this is going to be a somewhat lengthy explanation, but I have to tell you the story to make you understand why I appreciate the things I want to tell you about. Is on the flight over, I was wearing my Liverpool hat, and a stewardess came by, and she said, "Oh, love, are you from Liverpool?" And I said, "No, ma'am, I'm a Liverpool fan, And over the course of the 5.5-hour flight, she came back by several times talking to us. And toward the end of the flight, she knelt down and she had a sick bag, and she said, "I'm going to put down a number." She said, "This is my friend who is a general manager of a restaurant chain, and she'll take care of you. You tell her that Jen sent you, blah, blah. And here's my dad's number. Here's another number." She wrote down 2 or 3 phone numbers. She said, "These people will take care of you," etc. She gave me her phone number. Then, to our amazement, somehow she materialized a full bottle of champagne because we had told her it was our honeymoon, and she gave us a full bottle of champagne on an airline. So we were already like, wow, this is an incredible trip.
We landed in Manchester with me holding a full unopened bottle of champagne in my lap.
Do you want to shout out which airline that was?
Virgin Atlantic.
Virgin Atlantic. So, but it gets better. So the next day, she sends me a message and she says, "Oh, love, I found out that my friend's dad is the general manager of hospitality at Anfield, and he wants to make sure that your trip's really special, so he's going to take care of you." So we went on the tour, and it was fantastic, but nothing special happened outside of what everybody else did. So we were like, okay, whatever, it is what it is, That evening, I got a message from her, and she said, my friend's father is so upset because he gave some things to his staff, and they forgot to give them to you. So he's going to meet you at the game tomorrow to make sure that you get the things that he wanted you to have. It's like, okay, So we show up to the game, and he's there, and he recognizes us immediately because I guess she described us whatever. He said, "Come on in." And he gave us 2 bags filled with merchandise and things from Liverpool. And inside there was an autographed book with Ian Callahan's signature on it. That was just shocked me. I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, that's like getting an autograph of Babe Ruth or, Michael Jordan. I mean, it was just absolutely incredible. And probably a couple $100 worth of merchandise. It was just absolutely stunning. And simply because I was wearing a Liverpool hat on the way over, Now, I'll tell you, that's not going to happen to everybody. But to get to the answer of what you said, there were several things that happened like that on the way over. So I have to tell you, there are two things. One of them is that book with the Ian Callahan signature on it, just absolutely a treasure for me. The second one is when we went to Tranmere, the main steward, we got talking, learned that she sews, and he said, "Oh, well, I'm so proud of this." He said, "My wife embroiders the Tranmere logo on my steward jacket here." We were complimenting it and everything, right? And at the end of the game, he come over and he said, "Stick around for a minute if you can." He said, "The game's almost over. Would you stick around?" "Yeah, absolutely." The crowd cleared out, and the man took his steward jacket off and gave it to me as a souvenir. Dumbfounding that happened for multiple reasons. Number one, that the guy would even give it to me. Number two, he gave me a steward jacket, which seems like it's probably illegal. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like there's 100 reasons why that's just shocking. But that's probably the most treasured thing I got while I was there, because the gentleman even put a little tag on the inside with a safety pin with his email address on it. And I've corresponded with him since I got back, and just I never in a million years expected to get something like that just taken off of someone's back and given to me.
That's amazing. Both those stories, honestly, just the generosity of both those people is lovely. I have to say that was a lovely way to end the podcast, guys. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience of your trip to the UK. It was brilliant.
Thank you for having us.
Very much.
And really, honestly, thank you so much for having the sites that you do and all the information, because I tell you, we probably would have been lost without it.
Well, we found you through the podcast. We found the podcast. Right. Then we found that you had the Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And then I found that Doug had the train travel group. Right. And that was how we traveled. We used your advice even while we were there. Yeah. We were using your advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for everything.
Oh, thank you so much, guys, for coming onto the podcast this week. It was really lovely to have your trip report. And I will put photos and links in the show notes for this episode, which you can find at uktravelplanning.com/episode 98. That just leaves me to say until next week, happy UK travel planning.